Hi everyone, my name is Anaxagorou, and I am going to be reading some poems from my latest collection, After the Formalities, that came out in September of 2019, so a year now. Um, and and yeah, this is the book here. It was strange, so I didn't really get a kind of proper run. Really bad headache. I didn't get like a proper run with it because of the COVID that hit, so it kind of was doing the rounds for a little bit, and then it stopped doing the rounds. So yeah, it's good to kind of bring it back out again. I'll start with this poem called "Cause," which is at the front of the book, just to give you a bit of context about kind of the subjects that I was thinking about when writing this. Um, there's a lot of poems that work around empire and racism and things of that nature, looking at history. I'm Cypriot, my family from Cyprus, and there's a lot of looking at the way that the Cypriot identity and then race as a broader kind of construct is used and disseminated. So this poem is called Cause. And to the burning I say, my worry is a whole country. I've been myself longer than my undoing. Heavy trunk of silverware, museum glass polish, portraiture of bent flags. I'm here as my grandparents were, only with a moving mouth. During empire, my people were subjects first, citizens later. Once the vigilantes managed to zip up their coats, flames lambent. My grandmother died with umbrellas outstretched in her gut. My grandmother died. To be British is to be everywhere. Some roots have been in the earth for so long they know only to call themselves earth. A worm's pink nipple bleeds into snow. My birth, my mother's brown skin. I'd already filled half myself with Britannia's air. It took them a month to find my name. The next poem was, this is kind of, it's odd as well, because usually you have like a little clap or someone, I don't know, farts or picks their nose or does something to break up, but when it's just me kind of at the camera, I'm just going to imagine that there's someone, I'm not even going to say people, I'm going to say someone, one person is having a small conservative clap. So this next poem was written during the Brexit referendum. It was an event. It was an incident. Not shall I say, not really an event. It was an incident that took place on the day that the UK voted to leave the European Union. It took me quite a long time to work out how I was going to do this poem. Like, it went through like 7 different iterations before it kind of became the poem that it is in the book. And it was a difficult one to write for me anyway. Like, it was just, there was a lot of things that I was trying to say at the same time. It's called Uber. Door shuts, winds slap a magic tree around. A radio hums songs into us both. One of 2 phones rings. From an edge he tells her he'll call back in a language half packed back when I assume things took a turn for the worse. A flag hanging from the rear view. I ask where. He says Mauritius, returning my question. I say Cyprus, asking if he prefers it here. He says sleep is easier, the roads at night less congested. At the lights I ask about children. From his pocket he pulls a photo of a girl. I note the way her smile matches her mother's in the picture. Everyone's together, smiling. She turned 9 last week, he said. It's been over 5 years. Now, rain. Wipers wave like a tired pair of arms. A car makes an emergency stop. A homeless man moves like a saw into traffic. When will you see her again, I ask. Soon, soon. Now traffic builds. The other way would have been quicker, he says, to our right. A van pulls up. Two men motion to lower windows. In rain, he does, we do. Go home, home, go home, home. Laughing up a storm front, then speeding off. He tucks his daughter back in. Her mother, himself, gripping the wheel like a gun. How much can a pair of hands keep? One of two phones rings, declining the salt. The song on the radio ends. An ad suggests a weekend break to Europe, turning it off, bringing us right into where we were, asking, what about you? Do you have children? Do you prefer it here? A lot of the time, people kind of ask me where I'm from. I guess I have kind of one of those faces that you could be from like several different countries. You could pass for like someone from 7 different places. And so I've always been interested in like the difference between someone who's genuinely like curious culturally, maybe they've been to that country, there's no real malice, maybe they speak the language, there's just the kind of benign curiosity. But then there's another line, another side to that questioning, which is like, actually, these questions make me feel a little bit uneasy. So this poem that I'm going to read now kind of explores the tension between the two kind of dualities, I guess. And for a long time, I've never really been sure if it's me being paranoid or if it's someone actually just trying to pigeonhole me and stick me into like a certain type of person. Which I don't know. It just I guess English people do get that question. Where you white people get that question. It's just trying to navigate it is just weird. So this is what this poem is looking at. A line of simple inquiry. Follows in the traditional vein of questioning, when one encounters a person or persons they perceive to be other. The famous public autopsy, at a dinner party, art gallery, gymnasium or local bakery. 3 words light as a baby's finger. But where really? The taxonomy of difference, along with the need or entitlement to ask, so politely, with one hand resting on the elbow, displaying caution, not wanting to infer, with emphasis on assume, as in to avoid causing offence, becoming more scrutinised, every feature up against the light your body under their knife, the question again, so as to deduce, so as to allow the remarkable recalling of definitive histories, Ibn Khaldun, Mansa Musa, Phyllis Wheatley and Al-Afghani, your people, as in extraordinary, as in don't take this the wrong way, don't take this to heart. But it's also fascinating, an appreciation, if you will, to announce so subtly, without hubris, the panoply of books read on the way we eat and live and love and bury our dead. And really, it's all just so interesting. As if interest were a desperate thing scurrying across a mass grave, an artifact snatched from an old warrior's hand, neat wall text in a city museum, to cast iron eyes over incredulity. You don't look like the aquiline nose was the giveaway. Skin thicker than animal sex that never cracks under God, and all those nuances. Bloating the unfished ghosts of the sea and all that hair. Is it natural? Is it yours? Is it real? To touch what I own, take what I see. There's a reason why my daddy told me to keep a stone between my fists when I fight, and really, it's all just too complicated. And everything's already been said much better by people who had it much worse. But look here, is this your attempt to bid me farewell in my tongue? Are you here to help carry the burden of my name? Are your hands strong enough to lug it? We all know the stuck fish bone never meant any harm. Is that your hand still on my elbow? I have a son. and he's 5. When he was around 2.5, maybe 3, he asked me one day. I wrote this in my notebook. He said, "Are you going to be my dad forever?" I was like, "Man, that's a question. How do you answer that to a 3-year-old?" Still gets me every time. It's a tough one. I had to let him down. I said to him, I'm not, man. Like, we're all out here, and every day is one less day we'll get back. So, no. And I don't think he was that bothered. He was just like, oh. And then he's, carried on with his Power Rangers. But I think what I found interesting was that at the point that a child realizes that there is a timeline, that we're on a clock, we're against the ticker. And so I wrote this poem, Things Already Lost. It looked through the eyes of my son, who's quite curious about the world, like all children are, and looking at kind of mortality and parenthood, I guess. For me, I always try and write around stuff. I never really write into something. I don't know. Writing directly into something feels a bit boring. I always like to kind of like put on the ice boots and just take it around the outside. Things already lost. A dead rat could be a dead lung, except nobody wants to touch a dead rat without gloves. At the end of the funeral, my son asks, when will she climb out of the box? He learnt to say pigeon by asking what that flattened thing was in the driveway. Each morning for a week, he'd run to the window, waving at its disintegrating wings. Like this, he learnt the perils of grapes, to grip banisters and stand still for some block. In the park, he insists we race, and like any good father, I make my body age. He leaps, claiming victory. I feign a sadness, offering his rapture a little more time. He wants to keep a leaf for a pet. I want to warn him about getting attached to things already lost. In the bath, he needs to know where water ends when it disappears along with the dirt. At the table, he folds a napkin into a frail boat, pushes it along an edge. We watch a snail work the earth. He asks if the trail is a thing it makes or a thing it leaves. Ladybird blood is a firm yellow, containing only signal released when danger's close. He balances a blueberry on a spoon, reaching for my hand before crossing. When a motorcyclist is down, most of us will stand, one of us kneels. Nobody's sure where to touch. Let's do a fun one. We'll do a nice Christmas cracker. Not really. So this is I like doing this poem because it's fun for me to read. I don't really know what anyone else is making of it, but it doesn't matter. As long as I'm having a good time in my container in East London, live and direct. This is called Once I Had an Acceptance Speech. I'm not going to kind of demystify it. I'm just going to read it and make of it what you will. Driving too close to the curb. Admit to being poor. Stash pumpkin seeds for my kid. I hustle the Christian way. Starch my shirt collars. Value a strong smudge. I give pigeons saintly names. Cream both my feet. Recycle. Sign off emails with warm regards. Double tap hashtag vegan heart statuses which start with I am delighted to announce mornings. I struggle to decide what mood to wear. Evenings, I lie beside my aftershaves, imagining the sea. I should really have it by now. A Dyson, Panasonic bread maker, A photo by the piano of a slum tour. I need the spirit of a full moon party rather than the charisma of a shed. They honk when I slow. I swear with my eyes, think of real blood. Sunday comes and my dad asks, what's the plan? I knit him the only winning scratch card. I leave a candle on for destiny once. I had an acceptance speech written. Soon, a staircase will rise to defeat us all. The roads have moved. When I get in, I'll sit in the shower and say it's a bath. Double tap an ultrasound pick. Sip railroad water. Notification. Zank 1 started following you. Check my speed. Slap on another Barry Manilow playlist. Keep my greys in the dashboard. Wonder what the guy who put a gun to my little brother's head is doing for New Year's. Wonder if my neighbour made it through. Up ahead, a badger's hit beside a boulder. Its glare, a wooden egg I slow for. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Much appreciated. Oh, you're too kind. You're too. Sit down. Nah, you're getting carried away. Take a seat. Please. No, there's no need. I'm gonna. This last poem that I'll read is the title poem from the book. And it's the longest poem in the book. It's around 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes in length, depending on how fast I read it. And it looks at the history of race, beginning in the 15th century. Wasn't actually obviously not when racism was invented, but when we started to form a language for these systems of oppression and prejudice and favoritism. That's kind of where the poem begins. And then I use every 100 years, race became codified as being something else. And so I use each period to springboard off and look at my own family's experience as immigrants moving into this country from Cyprus in the late 50s, when it was still a British Commonwealth, but there was a lot of tension that was happening on the island. It was a very poor island. There was a rise of nationalism. They wanted the British out. And so my parents, my grandparents left and came here because it was still part of the Commonwealth. So you could do that prior to the Immigrants Act of, I think, 62 or 61, 61, like that. But yeah, after the formalities, thank you very much for listening to my ramblings at this unsavoury hour of 7:20 on Friday night in the year of our Lord 2020. This is called After the Formalities. In 1481, the word race first appeared in Jacques Debrez's poem The Hunt. Debrez uses the word to distinguish between different groups of dogs. In that hard year, grandparents arrived on a boat with a war behind them and a set of dog leads. Bullet holes in the sofa, burst pillows, split rabbits, passports bound in fresh newspapers, bomber planes, a dissenting priest, a money bag sucking worry. On the boat, grandmother anticipated England's winters with the others, slick snow on gold streets. Grandfather grieved 2 dogs he'd left, pedigrees, blue bottles decaying at the base of their bowls. The dogs of England were different. The water, though, fine to drink. In 1606, French diplomat Jean Nicot added the word race to the dictionary to denote distinctions between different groups of people. Nicotine is named after him. In London, grandparents lived with only a radio, a lamp favouring the wall's best side, Byzantine icons placed on paraffin heaters, arguing through whispers, not wanting to expose tongues, stories circulating, what neighbours do if they catch you saying I'm afraid, in a language that sounds like charred furniture being dragged across a copper floor. Grandfather always blew smoke out the lip of his window, so too did his neighbour, colourless plumes merging, how it's impossible to discern the brand of cigarette a single pile of ash derives from. In his 1684 essay, A New Division of the Earth, French physician Francois Bernier became the first popular classifier to separate humans into races using phenotypic characteristics. Mother's skin is the colour of vacations, her hair barefoot black. An island's only runway. Reports of racist attacks. Father turns up the volume, turns us down, chews his pork, stings the taste with beer, tells mother to pass the pepper. There is never a please. He asks if she remembers the attack. The hospital. His nose. A Coca-Cola bottle picked from his skull. Yes, she mutters the chase. Dirty bitch, I will make you white. Aphrodite, hard, dirty dog. Trembling with the street light. Please, God, not tonight. The kids. In his essay of 1775 on the natural variety of mankind, J.F. Blumenbach claimed that it was environment which caused the variety in humans. In the bathroom mirror, I spat blood from my mouth, quaver breath and suburban. My brother, desperate to piss, pulling the door open, asking what happened. I tried to fight, and I lost. Why? Because the island we come from is smaller than this, their names are shorter, pronounceable, so they exist. Even after their noses break, they still don't hook like ours. Their sun is only half peeled. He lifted his top to show me 2 bruises, to remind me of something. How history found its own way of surviving, a dark wash mixed with the whites, spinning round and around. In the bathroom mirror, my brother spat blood from his mouth, Suvla breath, and home, me, desperate to piss, pulling the door open, asking what happened. He tried to fight, and he lost. Why? Because the island we come from is larger than this. Here we chew up too much of their language, leave behind an alphabet of bones. We will never exist in their love songs. How many bruises does it take to make a single body? I left him, surviving history, a dark wash mixed with the whites, spinning round and around. In 1859, British naturalist Charles Darwin wrote, "On the origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favoured races in the struggle for life." If the house phone rings after midnight, someone you know is dying and breathing in 10 black moons under a siren or belfry. From the wound in my uncle's back leaked the first atlas. Blood escaping him like a phantom, vaulting over the spiked gates of heaven, the knife half still, half drunk, the motive skin or prayer. We went to visit. In the window's condensation, his daughter wrote, "Daddy, don't die," on the water of her breath. That evening, my father came home, one hand trumpet, the other reef, all his fists, the law. In his seminal book of 1911, Heredity in Relation to Eugenics, eugenicist Charles Davenport wrote, "Two imbecile parents, whether related or not, have only imbecile offspring." She had the same colour hair as Jesus. Most boys smile after. When we were done, I moved the blonde streak from my arm, wondering how much of my body was still mine. I smelt of rain on an old umbrella. My fingers a burnt factory. She asked if she was my first, and when I said, yeah, she smiled, pulling the covers up, whispering not to get too comfortable, how her father would be back, the bed a wet flag, the duvet breaking news. On the shelf, a gollywog, above her family portrait, poised like a saint. The Bengal Famine of 1943 killed 4 million people. Churchill ordered food to be sent directly to British soldiers in Europe. On hearing the number of Bengalis who had perished, he asked, "Why hasn't Gandhi died yet?" Outside the KFC, racists have always looked so short to me, like weathermen, driving his skull into mine like a belief. I saw how even evil can feel warm and smell good when close enough. A crowbar wedged against my throat. Slowly the lights began to wave, chips by my feet, black iron warming my skin so silently I could hear how suffering learns to soothe the jaws of antiquity. These men, irrational as any god, and me, emptying inside the promise of my oxygen tank. Those whom the gods wish to destroy, they first make mad. We must be mad, literally mad as a nation, to be permitting the annual inflow of some 50,000 dependents who are, for the most part, the material of the future growth of the immigrant-descended population. Enoch Powell, 1968. After the formalities, of course, I said London. Of course, he asked again. When I said Cyprus, he leaned into his chair, recalling a family holiday, the weather sublime, the people accommodating, particularly towards the English, how it was a shame about the Turkish thing, and your parents. When did they enter here? In the late 50s, I replied. So before the Immigrants Act. Yes, I said, before. Well, good for them, he said, putting the lid on his pen, closing his pad, asking me to talk a bit more about my previous roles. In 2001, philosopher Robert Berlusconi wrote, "The construct of race was a way for white people to define those who they regarded as other." In those days, I was required to fill out forms with multiple boxes. Some I left blank. My father would notice my omission. Filling in the white option with his black biro, I crossed it out, telling him I'm going with other. My mother, wearing the same sad skin as before, said, "We are not white." The look he gave her was snatching the form from me. The same X dominating so much white, let me tell you. Nobody in their right mind need make themselves such an obvious target, he affirmed. It's amazing how ideas start out, isn't it? Nigel Farage, 2016. My grandmother will die. Somewhere in her skeleton, white-sheeted, iodoform, thick, her mouth all beetle. My family will gather round her body, all fig. My mother will look for coins, despite there being nothing for money to save. Another lady, dying the same, will goad our kind, and through thick tubes she'll scorn. Her voice, a blue bottles, hot wings, your rule dogs, foreigners, and dirty outnumber us even in dying. The nurse will apologise for the whole of history. Drawing the curtain, mud is always the last thing to be thrown. A prayer reaching for the pride of an olive, like a hint to hold. And that, my friends, is the end of the poem. And the end of this evening's formalities. Thank you very much for listening to these poems. The book is called After the Formalities. It's published by Penned in the Margins. You can order it off their website. You can go and visit Jeffrey if you want to, stick a tenner in his electricity kit. That's fine, but I'd probably try and steer clear from Jeffrey and his enterprises. So yeah, it's up to you where you want to buy it. If you want to buy it, there's some independent bookshops around the UK that store it. There's some not independent ones that store it as well. So it's completely up to you. But yeah, if you like to buy it, there's also another book that I brought out in October of this year, actually, called How to Write It, that looks at the art and craft of poetry, but also publishing, the politics of writing, and a little bit of memoir, how I got here. So yeah, that's on Murky Books, which is part of Penguin. So you can grab that. $6.99. It's good. It fits inside the stocking. It's a little book. Cool. Thank you very much, and have a very pleasant evening. Goodbye.